Thank you, Sheikh. And just so that you don't think that he's an imposter, he was indeed promoted to brigadier general at the end of the war when Motagur came along. Eitan Bentzur, I would be very happy if you could go through the political moves of just before the war, the time just before the war. It's chiefly October 1973. I think that this fascinating and most important conference will not be complete if we don't try and answer the question of whether the state of Israel or the government of Israel could have prevented the Yom Kippur War. Preventing not by sending some raw information, less or more raw information from one hand to another, or some broader view, yes or no, because by that time the Egyptians were already ready for war. It was only a matter of the actual timing. And the question was whether one could prevent what one could have prevented the disaster that eventually occurred, namely the Yom Kippur War. I would like to maintain that the government of Israel could have prevented the Yom Kippur War even as early as February 71, when Yaring, even though his mission was belittled by some speakers this morning, however, in February 71, when Yaring proposed to Israel on behalf of President Sadat full withdrawal in return for peace, or rather peace in return for withdrawal to the borders of June 4th. And the precise phrasing was to enter into peace agreement. That is, in 1971, Israel was, or rather the Egyptian president proposed to Israel to have peace in return for withdrawal. Not on all theaters, only the Egyptian theater. And anyone who says differently has been briefed erroneously. Yaring was operating based on UN Resolution 242, which resulted from an international struggle which followed the Six-Day War. And then, following the Six-Day War, Israel was facing and had to cope with international pressure to withdraw immediately to the borders of June 4th, 67, not only in return for nothing, but also while threatening with a suit for compensation. And under those circumstances, and because Foreign Minister Eben and Prime Minister Eshkol had the utter conviction that the 67 war, Six-Day War was a war of defense, they offered Nasser full withdrawal to the June 4th borders in return for peace. And that proposal was definitely something that Sadat was aware of. Israel's political effort was based on the assumption even then that the Arabs want their territories back, and that should be used as an incentive for peace with Israel, or for a peace agreement with Israel, which will allow it to exist within safe and defendable borders. Ibn was of the opinion that the achievements of the Six-Day War should be translated to a situation whereby Arab countries would accept Israel as a sovereign state and will forgo their intention or desire to eliminate it. And that is what Ibn and Ashkol were striving at. They were focusing the result of the victory in the need for securing Israel's right for sovereignty in peace and security, freedom of movement in the seas, and freedom of trade. And anyone who is familiar with the records of the time can support me on this. Ibn and Ashkol were talking about peace agreements, about demilitarization, about a balance of powers, which of course meant retaining deterrence and minimal territorial changes. All this together was eventually consolidated into the concept of territory for peace. And we must bear in mind that the Israeli government under Eshkol was willing to propose a peace agreement with Egypt based on the international borderline, based on the doctrine of Prime Minister Eshkol. As a result of that, Israel strove to try and obtain international legitimization for the IDF staying along the ceasefire lines until Arab countries will be willing to make peace with Israel. And on November 22nd, after a long diplomatic effort, the resolution number 242 was passed, which said that any Israeli withdrawal will will occur only in return for a peace agreement. That resolution basically gave international legitimacy to Israeli presence in the territories until there is peace, and defined peace in strong enough terms, strong enough to revolutionize the Arab approach. It meant the end of boycotts against Israel. It anchored Israel's right to live in peace within secure borders, and it prevented any mention of going back to the armistice lines or returning to the lines of the 4th of June. That was the best resolution which it was able to obtain in the UN in the midst of the Cold War, while the Arab position was holding on to the Khartoum tenets, and in face of Arab countries that wanted to regain their dignity, reinstate their dignity. Eventually, Gunnar Yaring was appointed by the UN Secretary General to come to the Middle East and try and secure peace according to the principles manifest in Resolution 242, which were mostly congruent with the basic perception of the late Eshkol and Abba Ibn. Let's not forget that. And Yaring tried to promote peace based on Resolution 242. And in fact, it could be said that if he succeeded, then we were to see a completely new Middle East. However, side by side with the line that Ibn and Eshkol led, there was another school of thought that was gaining power, that wanted to retain the status quo and saw the territorial achievements as a goal in its own right, and they wanted it to stay that way. And that school of thought was supported by the fact that there was no partner for peace talks at the time, and gradually the line of those, or the school of thought leading towards peace, was overshadowed by them. So what you're saying, does that include the strengthening of Golda and Dayan? I mean, that was true about the time from February 71 until Golda met with Nixon in 73. And then, in the next elections to the Knesset, Ibn agreed to the Galili document and the establishment of Yamit. So what good was that moderate Minister of Foreign Affairs if he also supported that move? Well, here we come to the endemic lack of balance in the process of decision-making that is endemic to Israel. Abba even didn't have enough power to resist. But I would like to clarify the matter with Yaring. Well, I would like to urge you to be brief, because I think our audience might lose interest. Well, if you bear with me, you'll get the answer to this question. In the political and public system at large, there's an aura of complacency and both religious and non-religious messianism, which were feeding each other. The value of peace was being rejected on all parts, and Mr. Ibn, perhaps Mr. Yadlin remembers, Mr. Ibn was preaching for peace, and describing it in a very colorful way, but did not gain any political support, and found himself in a minority opinion, unable to cope with the security-oriented school of thought. Eitan, we must move along. Why don't I would like you to focus on the war itself. You're in New York, and let us get to that moment of October 12th, when the Israeli government makes a complete U-turn. Instead of opposing a ceasefire on the west bank of the Suez Canal, suddenly Israel is putting pressure in order to achieve that, and you in the UN are the one who has to try and achieve this. Well, obviously Ibn got that instruction or directive from Golda, and with his rhetorical capability and diplomatic skill, did his best to obtain what was required, but this is not what was most important. I would like to emphasize once more, but apparently I don't have much time, that when Yaring presented his review it was against the backdrop of Sadat willing to go for a peace agreement, with him bridging the gaps between the countries. And I would just like to quote from Madeleine Mezogopian, a Jordanian scholar who studied Yaring and his work. She quoted Yaring as someone saying that Al-Zayat, the Egyptian foreign minister, said, "We are presenting you with the most far-reaching document in the history of the Middle East." And Sadat would say to Yaring again and again, "How is this possible? I offered the State of Israel that peace proposal that it had aspired for from the moment that it was born, and I was rejected, and I did not get an appropriate, a proper answer, so what choice have I got left?"